Hello, Africa and the rest of the world. Welcome to Continental Prime here on News Central Television, reaching you live from Lagos, Nigeria's economic capital. I'm Sulaiman Alede. The headlines for this are: South Africans up in arms amid second round of rolling blackouts. Mali names CHOGUEL KOKALLA MAIGA as the country's new civilian prime minister. Burkina Faso begins its COVID-19 vaccination campaign. Details shortly. Well, the news begins in South Africa, where the people are up in arms over a second round of rolling blackouts in the country this week. The latest round of blackouts come as temperatures drop to single digits. The country's power utility has cited breakdowns at 2 of its plants. But bouts of load shedding have been a challenge for South Africa for many years now. Joining me to unpack this issue is energy analyst Ted Bloom. Good to have you, Ted Bloom. Now, this week's blackouts are not a first. About 3 weeks ago, there was load shedding owing to plant breakdowns at the Tutuka power plant. Now, this week, there are problems at the generating units at Arnold and Majuba. Why are there so many breakdowns? What is happening?
Okay, good evening. The problem with the reliability or lack of reliability of our main utility lies back in what's been happening over the last 20-odd years, since 2001. In 2001, Eskom, our utility, was voted Global Utility of the Year and won an award in New York City. Since then, the organization has been politicized, and government has taken over control and nomination of the management of that utility. And we've seen since then that the people that have run the organization, including the board, have not been competent. And in fact, the organization has been at the core of state capture, as they call it here, which is just a nice way of putting it as state corruption by the ruling party and its emiracies. So yes, in the last 12 years, since 2008, we've had load shedding, and that's attributable to various factors. In 2008, it was corruption on the coal account. In 2010, it was because of lack of maintenance. 2014, lack of maintenance. 2016, lack of maintenance. And where we are today under the new management, it's not just lack of maintenance, but it's also exacerbated corruption as well as incompetence. The people that are running the organization don't have the competence to run the organization, and most of the people that won the award in 2001 have got on pension or have left the country for greener shores.
Well, you know, Ted, listening to you, away quickly now from corruption, where can South Africans lay the blame for these power cuts?
I would, as an analyst that has covered this sector for more than 40 years, I would lay the blame squarely at the hand of the ruling party, the ANC. They've taken control of the organization, as they have also taken control of many of the state institutions, and they've been at the forefront of institutional corruption, where, for instance, at the building of the power stations that were commenced in 2008 and which are still not finished, the ruling party's investment arm was part and parcel of appointing the contractors and participating in the fruits of those contracts. And we've got exactly the same thing that happened again yesterday. A new coal entity to supply coal to Eskom has been appointed, and lo and behold, in the portfolio of shareholders are two of their ruling ANC's investment arms. And with immediate inception, the coal price to that entity was more than doubled from 190 rands in our currency to over 550. And that's just feeding the trough.
You know, earlier today, Eskom told the country that the generating reserves were depleted. Now, should there be an emergency in the sector?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, what has been closely held by the government and the ruling party is they've maintained the monopoly of Eskom, and only certain parties have been given licenses to supplement the power grid. And what needs to happen right now is we need to loosen ourselves from the stranglehold of that monopoly, which has cost us more than 3 million jobs in the last 12 years because of lack of availability of power, which has led to lack of investment in the country and closure of mines and continents, etc. So yes, what I'm hoping of investment in our country.
Well, I hope we can do with some of the questions because there were some glitch in that connection to you, Ted. But quickly here, Eskom has told South Africans to expect these blackouts in the next 5 years. How can that be?
Okay, so they've run the generation plant into the ground, and my estimate is that it will take at least 5 years to catch up on the maintenance and to do the refurbishment that hasn't been done over the last 20 years, and it will take at least 600 billion rand, which is at a rate of about 13 to the dollar, is about 50-60 billion dollars. To recapitalize or refurbish the generation plant. The problem with doing that is that by 2025, this country wants to wean itself from coal, and 90% of our generation plant runs on coal. So it's a bit of a conundrum because we've signed the Paris Accord, and but we don't have any money to invest in alternative energy generation capacity. In fact, for the 2 power stations that I referred to earlier that the government ruling party was invested in, for the price of them, we should have got 20 new plants, and we wouldn't have been in this pickle.
Now, lastly, Ted, how much of an impact are these blackouts on the South African economy?
It's terrible. It's absolutely ghastly. Besides the fact that we've got traffic snarl-ups because of the traffic lights not working, or the robots as we call them here, the fact of the matter is that we have had no proper investment in energy-intensive sectors for the last 12 years plus, because that's when the corruption really gained a pace, and the tariffs went through the roof to fund the corruption, and also the energy-intensive industries here, as I said, have relocated to other shores or have closed down.
Ted Blom, many thanks for unpacking this for us.
You're welcome.
Now, staying in Southern Africa, Namibia's chief negotiator, Zed Ngavire, is confident the reconciliation agreement with Germany to recognize the crimes of more than 100 years ago can still go ahead despite criticism. Ngavire said today that the negotiation had reached a point where both sides agreed. He, however, said the timetable to sign the deal had to be delayed as the Namibian parliament was in recess until June 8. On Monday, representatives of the Council of Chiefs of Namibia described the support payments of 1.1 billion euros offered by Germany as unacceptable. Ngavire also said allegations that the Council of Chiefs had not been involved in the negotiations were unfounded, as there had been many meetings with them. Now, in the Horn of Africa, a new United Nations report on food security has found that cereals remain far below average production levels in South Sudan. This is despite a 7% rise in production between 2019 and 2020 because of favorable rains. The Crop and Food Security Assessment Mission report was prepared by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations and the World Food Programme. According to the report, a high cereal deficit is expected for 2021 owing to the impact of prolonged conflict and floods. It concludes that South Sudan needs 1.3 million metric tons of cereal a year to feed its 12.2 million people. Now, Libya and France have reactivated their joint commission, which was suspended in 2002. Now, this was announced by the Libyan Prime Minister Abdelhamid Al-Beiba, who is currently in France on a visit. In a statement, Al-Beiba welcomed the official resumption of relations under the government and institutions of a unified state in Libya. Now, the Libyan Prime Minister praised the roles by France and the European Union in supporting Libya in the fight against illegal migration, terrorism and organized crime. The conference has been called for June 23 by German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas and the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres. Mali's interim president, Colonel Assimi Goïta, has named the country's new civilian prime minister. CHOGUEL KOKALLA MAIGA's appointment was widely expected. Now, here's the leader of the June 5 rally of Patriotic Forces movement, which is the same group that took part in the overthrow of former President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta last year. In the meantime, the ECOWAS Parliament has condemned the coup in Mali, which has seen a forceful change of government by the military. The Speaker of the ECOWAS Parliament, Sidi Mohamed Tunis, said the Parliament will resist every attempt to destabilize the region. Mohamed Tunis also added that the Parliament is fully behind every attempt to restore peace in Mali. He says the Parliament will resist those using violent attacks within the SWAP region to reverse gains made through democracy.
We have been following closely unfolding developments in Mali. Earlier this year, I led a parliamentary fact-finding mission to that country and held discussions with all stakeholders in the transition process. We were assured by all parties of their commitment towards a transition to democratic rule. Unfortunately, we have observed a few days ago a dramatic shift in the political situation, which led to the arrest of the transitional president and the prime minister. I wish to emphasize that the ECOWAS Parliament condemns in the strongest terms the military takeover in Mali and all acts in the region that threatens and stalls the process of entrenching democracy across our states. We have made many efforts in securing a peaceful and stable ECOWAS, and it is about time we take firm and decisive actions against forces that tend to reverse this trend. The ECOWAS Parliament stands ready to support all efforts aimed at putting Mali on the right trajectory of peace and democracy.
Mr. Speaker, in addition to this health crisis, our other great preoccupation must be the fight against terrorism, which is afflicting our region and the world. Despite our best efforts at dealing with this menace, there are persistent attempts to destabilize several countries of the community through attacks on state symbols, civilian populations, and military bases, as has been the case recently in Niger, Mali, Côte d'Ivoire, Burkina Faso, and right here in Nigeria. We're all agreed that peace and security, as well as safeguarding the democratic institutions of member states, are today a major challenge for our region. We cannot sufficiently reiterate the importance of peace and stability to the growth and development of our region. It is important that we consolidate our efforts in rooting out terrorism and threats of terrorism in West Africa. Apart from our people living in constant fear and uncertainty, we cannot expect to attract the requisite levels of investment should this state of insecurity persist.
Well, in Nigeria, the Lagos State Police Command has responded to a viral audio recording suggesting an attack on one of the biggest electronic markets in the state. While addressing the leaders of the major markets in Lagos, the Commissioner of Police, Hakeem Odumosu, said the police will not relent in ensuring the state and the markets are secure at all times. He urged the market leaders to work together and support the police with credible intelligence. News Central's correspondent Bernard Akede was at the meeting, and he brought this report.
Following the recent spells of insecurity bedeviling Lagos State, Nigeria's commercial capital, and the country in general, the Lagos State Police Command, under the leadership of Police Commissioner Mr. Hakeem Odumosu, held a meeting with the leaders of the major markets in the state. The meeting was necessitated by an audio recording that recently went viral on social media, where a man's voice, reportedly that of Nnamdi Kanu, leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, warned about the plans to set the popular Alaba International Market on fire.
What I want to report is that, as I said before, they want to attack Alaba International Market and burn it down.
For this period,
while responding to the recording, the CP gave his assurance that the police will always remain proactive when it comes to securing the market and the state in general.
What we want is that message that we shall work on, so that jointly we shall provide security for ourselves. We cannot do it alone. We cannot do it alone. Because we are not with you 24 hours. And if you don't get information, we will not be able to come.
The market leaders took turns in responding to the words of the CP, most of them thanking the various divisional police officers who oversee their market areas and suggesting what else could be done to further beef up security in the markets.
As we are coming here today, we have more assurance from the Commissioner of Police that they are there with us, that anytime that we call them, they will answer us.
The issue of discrimination should stop. You know, where the Igbos will discriminate against the Yoruba and the Yoruba will discriminate against the Igbos and the Hausas should stop. We are all doing business in an environment and we should be able to live in harmony within that community.
There are so many other formations in Lagos State.
The CP said all suggestions will be taken into consideration, and as for the person who shared the viral audio recording, here's what the police commissioner had to say.
You see, so many times they put things out, maybe for reasons well known to them. But at the end of the day, by the time the law catches up now, what the law will be. We will allow it just to go like that. So actions is going on. So when we get to the bridge, we just let you know. But so many times we had that on the social media, and we have through technology gotten the people that are giving all this out, arrested, prosecuted. The same thing on this one, and not only police, security agencies were in synergy on this because it's putting everybody on high jump.
In the end, the market leaders expressed gratitude to the police commissioner and the entire police command for the reassurance of safety of their lives and property. Bernard Akede, News Central.
Well, from security matters in Nigeria's economic capital, Lagos, to Mauritius, where the Revenue Authority says it has discovered and seized 3.7 kilograms of heroin that arrived on Sunday on board an Air Mauritius flight from South Africa. An MRA official said the drug was found in a metal pipe concealed in a shipment of spare parts for boats. Now, the Mauritius Anti-Drug and Supporting Unit has opened an investigation to locate the sponsors of the drug. Better late than never as Burkina Faso begins its COVID-19 vaccination campaign with a target to vaccinate 3% of the population. Details of this and more when the news returns. Stay. Welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching the Continental Prime here on News Central Television. Now to updates on the coronavirus pandemic. Well, the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention said the number of confirmed COVID-19 cases on the continent has reached 4.8 million as of Wednesday noon. The Africa CDC said the death toll from the pandemic stood at over 131,000, while more than 4.3 million patients across the continent had recovered from the disease. South Africa, Morocco, Tunisia, Ethiopia and Egypt are the countries with the most cases in the continent, according to the Africa CDC. In terms of the caseload, Southern Africa is the most affected region, followed by the northern and eastern parts of the continent, whilst Central Africa is the least affected region on the continent. Now, Egypt has set a target to vaccinate 40% of the country's population against COVID-19 by the end of 2021. Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli made the announcement in a televised address on Wednesday. Madbouli said that by the end of Wednesday, 2.5 million people would have been vaccinated from a total of 6 million people who signed up on the government's registration platform. He added that the first batch of locally made vaccines will be ready in July. Now, Zambia on Wednesday recorded 742 new COVID-19 cases in the last 24 hours as the reality of the third wave began to take a toll. Now, the country's health ministry said the new confirmed cases were picked from almost 10,000 tests conducted during the period, signifying a 7.5% positivity rate and bringing the cumulative cases to almost 97,000. The health ministry said 69 more recoveries were recorded, taking the cumulative total of recoveries slightly above to 92,000. The Southern African nation reported 2 new deaths during the period, bringing the death toll to more than 1,200. Now, South Africa's Northern Cape province has recorded the highest incidence of new cases of COVID-19 in the past few weeks. The Premier of the province, Zamani Saul, disclosed this on Wednesday during an online briefing that focused on the rise in COVID-19 cases in communities and schools, as well as the provincial vaccine rollout plan. Saul said the province's weekly incidence was 171 cases by 100,000 people, making it the highest in the country. He also encouraged those eligible for vaccination to register and await the opportunity to get vaccinated. Burkina Faso has launched its COVID-19 vaccination drive, first offering the jab to the vulnerable, health workers and others on the front line. Around 200 doctors, nurses and other medical staff received the first jabs at a medical site in the south of the capital, Ouagadougou. Health Minister Charlemagne Ouedraogo said the vaccination campaign complements the system put in place in response to COVID-19. He encouraged those targeted in the first phase to get vaccinated. Nigerians who have taken the first dose of the Oxford AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccines have been asked to complete the dosage by taking the second jab. The National Primary Healthcare Development Agency, responsible for administering the vaccines, says this is to ensure full protection from the coronavirus. The Executive Secretary of the agency, Dr. Faisal Shoaib, told reporters in the country's federal capital, Abuja, that about 73,465 persons have already received their second jabs.
73,465 Nigerians have also received their second dose across 36 states and the FCT. This includes His Excellency President Muhammadu Buhari and Vice President Yemi Osibanjo, who both received their second doses on Saturday, May the 29th. We continue to advise that all Nigerians who have received their first dose to check their vaccination cards for the dates of their second dose and proceed to the same health facility where they got their first jab to ensure full protection against COVID-19.
In Africa, we are witnessing a kind of paradox. While on the one hand, the continent has received less of its share in terms of vaccine through the COVAX facility or other mechanism. At the same time, we have a number of African countries that are losing the vaccine because they expire before even they could be used. Some are redistributing the vaccine elsewhere. So it's kind of sending a contradictory message about the need for vaccine. We need those vaccines to end the acute phase of the pandemic.
Please take the second dose of vaccine. COVID vaccination is a very important part of the COVID response. And I can assure you that the safety of the vaccine outweighs the risk against the COVID disease itself.
Away from the coronavirus, but staying with health matters. Nigeria's federal government says it has presented an improved allowance package of over 300% increase for junior health care workers and about 600% increase for senior health workers. Minister of Labour and Employment, Dr. Chris Ngige, disclosed this to journalists after an extensive negotiation session with health workers in the country's capital, Abuja. The minister said the new pay rise put into consideration the federal government's current financial status. He asked the workers to accept the offer despite their resolve to get back to the federal government in 2 weeks' time.
The government side, led by the Minister of State, Budget and Planning, I can't offer them. They gave them an amount. The government side gave that offer based on the reality we have on ground that the economy is not doing very well and that the budget we have is a budget that is actually being funded on borrowing, the capital component. And the earnings of government have also drastically gone down. So they are going back to their people with the government offer, and they asked for 2 weeks adjournment. They enabled them conclude negotiations. But we moved from the 5,000 a month, which was long forgotten until COVID came. And during COVID, you know, government spent for 3 months about 31 billion for payment for last year up to now. So the government side had offered things that I think very reasonable, increasing the former positions for junior workers and for the senior workers. Junior workers, I think about 350% rise, and the senior workers are about 600%.
Now, Israel says it will start vaccinating people between the age of 12 and 15 next week. Details of this and more after the break. Join us again. Now, Israel says it will start vaccinating adolescents between the age of 12 and 15 against coronavirus next week. The Minister of Health, in a statement on Wednesday, said the decision to expand the age range was taken after experts warned about a probable link between the second dose of the Fisa vaccine and myocarditis, or inflammation of the heart muscle. Now, the ministry said the vaccine was effective and safe, adding that the risk of COVID-19 complications were higher than those of the vaccine. Now, the G7 countries, in tandem with the High Representative of the European Union, has vowed to adopt strong measures to tackle corruption. The ministers, in a statement on Wednesday, pledged to put strong measures in place to prevent corruption and other forms of illicit finance, to protect financial centers and deny safe haven to the proceeds of crime. The G7 ministers pledged to actively enforce both domestic and foreign bribery laws, as well as ensure effective implementation of the OECD Anti-Bribery Convention. The ministers also stressed that they were anticipating the G7 ministerial meeting in September just to discuss joint efforts to tackle corruption. Now, a new assessment of the International Labour Organization has shown the labour market crisis created by the COVID-19 pandemic is far from over. The ILO's World Employment and Social Outlook also said employment growth will be insufficient to make up for the losses suffered until at least 2023. The report projects that the global crisis-induced jobs gap will reach 75 million people in 2021 before falling to 23 million in 2022. The Director General Guy Ryder said the report illustrates what COVID-19 did to people's working lives in 2020.
There's a lot to worry about, because the first thing to say is, even on an optimistic scenario, the build back over the next year and a half until the end of 2022 is simply not, on current trends, going to restore the damage done by the pandemic. We'll still fall short by a large number of jobs, 23 million jobs in all likelihood. The second thing to worry about, and it's perhaps even more important, is the unevenness of the impact that the pandemic has had. It's hit the most disadvantaged, the most vulnerable, in countries and between countries. So what we're seeing is that the bounce back in labour markets, already apparent in some parts of the world, that's going to be stronger and better in the high-income countries. Why? Because they've got better access to vaccines and therefore are able to open up more quickly, but also because they've got more resources. They're richer countries. So the fiscal space, as we say, to support people and to support enterprises, to stimulate the economy, is that much greater. Whilst for the low-income countries, of course, they're disadvantaged in this regard. So contrary to what we saw, for example, back on the financial crisis, this is a recovery process that runs the risk, unless we take the right action.
Well, Tululokwe has the rest of the business news.
This is Business on NC Continental Prime. I'm Tululokwe Adeleru Balogun. ShopRite Holdings has sold its Nigerian business to Nigerian buyer Ketron Investment. This comes nearly 16 years after the South African retailer opened its first outlets in the country. ShopRite entered into a share purchase agreement with Ketron, a Nigerian company owned by a group of institutional investors led by property group Persianas, for the disposal of its entire interest in Retail Supermarkets Nigeria Limited. While the price was not made public, ShopRite shares on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange were up 4.21% earlier today. ShopRite, one of the first South African companies to expand into Nigeria, is changing from an ownership to a franchise model after reviewing its long-term options in Africa, which was once touted as the next bright growth spot for retailers. South Africa's power utility Eskom Holdings has announced that it will cut power supplies across the nation until Friday. This was announced after more breakdowns at some of its facilities. The state-owned company said it would extend cuts of 2,000 megawatts from the grid because of shortages caused by 2 plant failures. Eskom, which has faced delays in restarting 2 other generating units that were being serviced, said it has been forced to ration power further after exhausting emergency reserves. The utility, which supplies 95% of South Africa's electricity, resumed rolling blackouts on May 31st. Eskom is saddled with about 400 billion rand, about $29 billion worth of debt that is adding to the government's challenge of attracting new investment to stoke growth in Africa's most industrialized economy. And still on electricity news, the Kenya Electricity Generating Company has commenced drilling the first geothermal well for the Ethiopia Electric Power Company. This sets in motion phase 2 of a 7.6 billion Kenyan shilling contract. The company started the exercise on May 29th and has so far drilled 29 meters against a possible maximum of 3,000 meters. This further entrenches KenGen's foothold in the Horn of Africa as a leader in geothermal energy production. With KenGen's entry into the country, Ethiopia is now staring at a geothermal generation breakthrough. KenGen's participation in Phase 2 of the project is a follow-up on the completion of Phase 1 of the contract by the consortium that built 2 rigs at the Aluto site in Ethiopia. Under this project, which is financed by the World Bank through a loan to the Ethiopian government, a total of 8 wells will be drilled in Lot 1 using 2 rigs with expected revenue of 620 million Kenyan shillings. That's about $6.2 million. Kenya's inflation recorded a slight increase in May. It increased from 5.76% in April to 5.87% in May 2021, following a hike in the cost of food and transportation. The monthly reports from the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics attributes the modest increase to higher cost of transport, food, and non-alcoholic beverages. The cost of food and non-alcoholic beverages rose by 1.26% month-on-month and 7.36% year-on-year. A kilogram of cabbage recorded the highest increase in price, retailing at 44.85 Kenyan shillings, about 7.3% higher than its April 2021 price. Kale and onions also registered price increments of 6.5 and 5.03% respectively, retailing at 53.98 Kenyan shillings and 112.65 Kenyan shillings respectively. Food products, which carry the largest weight in the inflation basket at 32.19%, rose 0.32% from April. And across the continent, we still have some figures for you as Nigeria's external reserves lost $640 million in May, falling to $34.24 billion as at May 28 from $34.88 billion as of April 28. Figures obtained from the Central Bank of Nigeria revealed that the reserves have been fluctuating in recent weeks. In March, the reserves lost $178 million after dropping from $34.99 billion as of March the 1st to $34.82 billion as of the end of March 31st. In February, the reserves dropped $1.1 billion, falling from $36.19 billion as of February the 1st to $35.09 billion on February 26th. External reserves stood at $35.44 billion at the end of January 2021, a decrease of 2.8% and 3.5% from $36.46 billion in December 2020 and $36.73 billion in January 2020. And as we end the news, let's take a quick look at the top gainers at the Nairobi Stock Exchange. And that's all the business news we have for you right here on NC Continental Prime. I'm Tolulope Adeleru Balogun. There's more news right around the corner. Stay with us.
Thanks, Tolulope. Now, President Muhammadu Buhari's tweet was today deleted after Nigerians asked for it to be taken down. Reasons by Nigerians for it to be taken down varied. Sean Bankole is on standby to share some of those reasons with us on NC Trends.
Social media has been buzzing, and we are going to take a look at what's trending and the conversations around them. Welcome to NC Trends. I'm Sean Bankole. Now, hashtag Buhari is trending online, and here's why.
Now, for those of us who are unfortunate to be in the field for the 30 months of the civil war, to see the carnage of how we kill ourselves, at least 1 million people. I think those that are misbehaving, they were either too young, they didn't know what happened. But for those of us who went through all these things, we can't understand. So we will treat them in the language they understand.
The Nigerian president in a thread suggesting a decisive and firm clampdown on secessionists from the southeast with a reference to the Nigerian civil war that happened between July 1967 and January 1970 has sparked outrage on social media. In his words, the president said, Whoever wants the destruction of this system will soon have the shock of their lives. Those of us who went through Nigerian civil war will treat them in the language that they understand. Now, in reaction, Nigerians in their numbers reported the tweet and called for the suspension of Mr. President's Twitter handle. Twitter has since deleted a particular tweet citing a violation of its rules. Here are some of the reactions online. We have this tweet from Pengman Model, who says that Twitter deleted Buhari's genocidal tweet. Thank you, Jack. And this is exactly why Twitter didn't make their African HQ in Nigeria. They wouldn't have been able to do what they just did. Another angle. All right, moving away, we have a tweet from Ayo Bankole, who says that I don't get why people say we shouldn't have reported Buhari's tweet. I reported it and I'm glad it was taken down. Pulling down a president's tweet is an indictment and confirms the statement is genocidal and short of minimum standards of decency. Screenshots can be used for posterity. Amen? Moving away from that to the final tweet, we have this one from Aisha Yesufu, who says that my name is Aisha Somtochukwu Yesufu. Any threat to Igbo people is a threat to me. An attack to Igbo people is an attack on me. I condemn the 1967 threats from President Buhari to the Igbo people. No Nigerian is more Nigerian than any Nigerian. All right, we'll now move to East Africa, where a Tanzanian member of parliament, Condesta Sichwale, was ejected from parliament for wearing tight-fitting trousers. Yes, as you can see. Now, reports have it that the member of parliament for the ruling CCM party showed up for work in a standard yellow top and her black trousers, but a consensus was reached after another member of her party reported her, and the Speaker of Parliament threw her out for wearing non-parliamentary attire. Anyways, he added that this was not the first complaint he had received about the attires of female MPs. Condesta complied with the directive and left, but she was in shock, as you can see in the pictures. All right, reacting to the report, we have this tweet from Msizi Dube. She says that Tanzania should be focusing on serious matters in uplifting Africans instead of judging the way women are dressed. It's the mind that matters. It's the mind that matters. All right, moving away from that, we have this tweet from @TheRealDK He says, Tanzania, it seems patriarchs could no longer hold their breath to the feminist thing that is manifesting in Tanzania politics since Madam President Samia took over. Her leadership is shaking patriarchal norms. The MP is decently dressed. Must she wear a dera and kanga to work? No, really, must she? All right, finally on that, Barb says, I still don't see an issue with what she's wearing. All right, that's all on that. Back to Nigeria. Wizkid announced plans for his Made in Lagos album tour, and while his fans showed excitement, a particular Twitter user lambasted him. According to the tweet, Wizkid is inconsiderate for announcing the tour amidst the killings in Nigeria. The same Wizkid that bashed Ricardo Banks for announcing their collaboration during the 2020 EndSARS protest in Nigeria. But little did he know that he was setting himself up for premium dragging from Wizkid Fans Club, who dragged him like Tiger Jen. Let's check out some of the comments. Okay, so this was a tweet from Silent Observer, who says that, so I heard Wizkid Made in Lagos tour is fixed. Remember clearly that on the 15th of October 2020, Wizkid slammed Ricardo for posting about a collaboration during EndSARS. So what's the difference now? So the killings in the East is not important, Abi. Let's check some of the comments on that tweet. Ayomide says, bro, you're right. If it was someone else, Wizkid would have insulted them. That's one angle. Let's check another angle that disagreed with Silent Observer. Twinex_realman says, person cancelled when he was meant to release album for Una. Now we should cancel another million projects again for you. I understand the scenario, but sure you will feed him if he is out of cash, or you will give capital and profit meant for that project. Guy. All right, that's where we wrap things up today. Thank you for watching, and remember to share your thoughts with us by tweeting at News Central TV with the hashtag NCTrends. I'm Seun Bankole. Back to Sulai with the rest of the news.
Well, we're done all too soon. I think for me, two key things stood out there. Show President Buhari's tweet being taken down, and the Tanzania parliamentarian an addressing. Well, it's transfer season in the world of football, and Onyeo Barrow has the latest scoop on who's staying and who's leaving, but not who's badly or well-dressed.
Yes, of course, not who is badly or well-dressed. In the Back to those that are staying, Sulai, I would say former Nigerian captain Mikel Obi is one in the news to stay. Okay, let's go straight to what we've got in the world of sport. We've got former Nigerian captain Mikel Obi having to extend his contract at Stoke City. The 34-year-old former Chelsea midfielder, of course, will have to stay with the Championship side for the time being. Mikel won a Champions League and 2 Premier League titles with Chelsea and is a former Nigerian international. He's regularly captain of Stoke City for the last season. Mikel played 41 times for the Porters in 2020 and 2021 after joining them from Turkish side Trabzonspor. Now to the Tokyo Olympic, Burundi's Francine Niyonchaba has qualified for the 5,000 meters event at the upcoming Olympics in Tokyo after attaining the qualification time at the meeting in France. The 28-year-old ran a time of 14 minutes, 54.38 seconds as he finished fourth in the race, beating his own personal best by more than 17 seconds. The race was won by Kenya's Beatrice Chebet, who finished just over 2 seconds ahead of Niyonchaba. The 28-year-old, who won silver over 800 meters at the 2016 Games in Rio, has decided to move up the long-distance event rather than taking testosterone-reducing drugs. Still at the Olympics, at the same meeting in the outskirts of Paris, Burkina Faso's Hugo Fabri-Sango continued his good form with another win on the triple jump with a leap of 17 to 67 meters. Ivory Coast's Marie-José Talou won the women's 100 meters in the time of 11.06 seconds, just ahead of Gambia's Guinea-Bass, 11.30 seconds. Talou's compatriot Arthur Cisse was victorious in the men's event, clocking a time of 10.11 seconds. Kenya's Abel Kipsang was the other African winner on the night in the men's 1500 meters, as he finished ahead of compatriot Charles Simuchwo, with Morocco's Bahrain Kazuzi in the third place. The International Olympic Committee has set a 29th June deadline for athletes wanting to compete in Japan to secure qualification for the Tokyo Olympics. And now, former South African #1 Kevin Anderson lost in the first round of the French Open to South Korea's Kwon Soo. The big serving South African, who has been plagued by injuries over the last few years, looked out of sorts in the opening exchanges as he went down in 4 sets to the 96th ranked player in the world. Now finally in sport, Aisha Johansson has said she will not stand for re-election as president of Sierra Leone Football Association in Saturday's election. Johansson's decision comes after she was elected as the Confederation of African Football's only woman representative at the FIFA Council in March. Her decision to withdraw from the polls will bring to an end her 8-year stint as head of Sierra Leone Football Association. She has pledged to continue to support Sierra Leone's football development through her new role at the FIFA. And there you have it, sports stories at this time. I am Onyechi Obaro. Over now to Sulai for the rest of the news.
Many thanks, Onyechi. If there's anything a lot of Africans bothered about, it has to do with weather. So let's check out what to expect in terms of precipitation and sunshine, and that's from our Met department. And that's all on the news at the Czar. But before we go, let's take another look at some of the major stories. South Africans are up in arms amid a second round of rolling blackouts. Mali has named CHOGUEL KOKALLA MAIGA as the country's new civilian prime minister. Finally, we told you that Burkina Faso has begun its COVID-19 vaccination campaign. Now follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can also download our mobile app on the the Google Play and iOS. You can also watch the News Central live in Star Times, channel 274, Avio TV channel 23, and on YouTube live. I'm Sulaiman later. Many thanks for watching.